John Lynch asked by Matt Mayoko if there's a crisis, if the Niners are in crisis. He said, no, we are not in crisis. And I really do view this game this week. It looks like Jimmy will be back. We'll talk about that. For Kyle Shanahan, because I think Kyle is, John Lynch did the interview. We talk about Trey and Jimmy, but Kyle is at the center of every one of these diagrams. It's an opportunity for Kyle to kind of get it back, get to 500, do it on Sunday Night Football, and feel like you can, if not get your mojo back, at least just chill the crisis questions. We're glad you're watching our video. Give it a like if you like it, and subscribe to this channel.
Yep, 55% of you are not subscribed, so do that now, and check out our podcast below in the description.
Also, we're sponsored by Tito's Handmade Vodka.
Check it out. #1 vodka in America. Yeah, I mean, this guy went from, the Jim Harbaugh experience was unlike anything I've quite experienced, of a swag level from a coach. And it's not like, it's not like he was Brian Daboll dialing up these sweet plays. I mean, he wasn't even the offensive coordinator. Jim was just there. Now, he called in the plays, but they were coming from someone else. But Jim just had this swag that he made everyone believe, like, Jim Harbaugh is our coach. We're going to kick the shit out of you. Kyle was different because it felt like Jim would legitimately fight you. Like Jim would okay, you want to get in an actual fight? Like Jim would have been down. Kyle doesn't feel like that, but he felt like the cool dude. He actually felt very Californian, right? Flat bill hats, the Milan, having cocktails, just doing sweet shit, and then dialing up sweet plays. And everywhere you went, people were like, Kyle Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan. And it feels like everyone's kind of jumping off the bandwagon. And in fairness, it has been ugly. So are they in crisis? Anytime you have Super Bowl aspirations, hell, playoff aspirations, and you lose 3 straight games, this is not baseball. A 3-game losing streak in college football, or even in the NFL, obviously college football, it's devastating. But in the NFL, it's a really big deal too. Historically, in a 16-game season, you can lose 6 games, right, and get in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So we would be in the middle of October and being like, well, they only have 3 more games left, and that's if, and who knows, people could win more games. You still are not guaranteed. But it feels like Kyle had his worst 3-game stretch of his 49er career. Because even last year with the injuries, it just felt like, remember the game against the Eagles that Carson Wentz beat him? That game ended, and it was like Kyle had these fucking incredible plays dialed up. They had this leak out to use check. He was wide open, and he would have walked in the end zone from their own 30. It would have gone 70 yards, and Nick Mullins overthrows him. Then there's the other play where he throws a pick that hits some random Eagle who can't be any good because their team's terrible, right in the numbers. And whenever they lost last year, it was like Mullins and CJ suck because they were guys wide open. We're watching these games this year, and it doesn't feel that often, guy, where you're just like, that guy's wide open, man. That guy's wide open. And when I say wide open, there was a play, I watched the Cowboy game a couple days ago, and the overtime final play was they ran this deep breaking across the field route to CeeDee Lamb. Basically, they knew that if Jalen Mills gets matched up on CeeDee Lamb, this thing is, I don't know if they knew he was going to score because it was a 70-yard scoring play, but they knew it was going to be a huge play for the Cowboys. And it was just Kellen Moore, I'm sure Dallas Cowboy radio and everyone in Dallas, that was a big-time play call. Where are those from Kyle? And that's always where, in the heat of the McVay debate, was I'm taking Kyle. You can't say that right now with a straight face because Sean's kicking ass and taking names. He does not have 3-game losing streaks. And is there a crisis? To me, a crisis is you're getting fired. To me, a crisis is the New York Giants. But you have a problem on your hands. You are losing games to teams that coming into the season you viewed as equals. And you've lost multiple home games, right, back-to-back to Green Bay. And now in a weird way, it feels like your season's on the line, again, at home. So I would say if you lost this game in 4 straight games and 3 out of 4 at home, it would be a serious crisis. And it would reflect on Kyle.
I don't want to sound like a 8th grade speech. Usually it starts with something like a definition. Webster's defines crisis as, I think probably everybody between the age of 9 and 17 wrote a paper that had some version of that in it. If you open up a student newspaper and the like student sports columnist is writing, there might be something like that. Crisis is defined by Webster's as, but I'll do it, a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. Are they in crisis? That's not the way I think. I would not have thought of that word, but I do think they're on the verge of intense difficulty. If they lose the game, they're 2-4. And that makes it very hard to make the playoffs in a year where you absolutely had the goal of being a playoff team, if not a Super Bowl contender. This is not year 2, right? And then you have to decide, are you going to play the quarterback, Trey Lance, that it doesn't seem like at this point you want to play if Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy. So it does not match in my head what I would think of as crisis, but I do think there's actually some, I don't think it's as, when I think of it in those terms, as crazy as I initially thought. It's they're in danger here. Now, in danger of what? In danger of being fired tomorrow? No. But in danger of this season.
Are the Seahawks at 2-4 with Russell injured? Would you say that's a crisis in their building?
I mean, yes, their season is absolutely in intense danger. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially when you also factor the elephant in the room. He had kind of demanded a trade, but not really. Said you could trade me, listed the teams. Like, they got some weird shit going on. There is a weird element here, I would say, the crisis, just because the Niners quarterback situation is a fluid, moving target. Now they have, he's got to prove he's the long-term guy, but who's going to be the quarterback at minimum the next 3 seasons, right? After this one, they're just going to
Trey Lance,
Daniel Jones. Like the moment Daniel Jones was drafted, eventually once they get rid of Eli, you knew, good or bad, Daniel Jones was going to get 3 seasons. So to me, there's an answer. There's a finality of who the quarterback's going to be, but you gotta, sometimes when you're weaving your way to that point. And I think Daniel Jones is a good example. It was tough with the Eli situation. Eli was over the hill. Sometimes it can be difficult, early on in that transitional period. Flacco and Lamar, remember, he started half the season. Then Lamar came in and it was, kind of sparked them. It's just a weird time for a franchise when you have, and I'm not, Jimmy, those guys have won, Eli won 2 and Flacco won the 1, but Jimmy was an established starting quarterback with the team. Kind of, I guess he was always injured, but it was a little different than those 2 individuals. But you get what I'm saying? I do think that creates just some weirdness, off the bat. And then the moment you lose, if you just lose, right, when I'm trying to think of a team like the Titans and the Bills, watching that Monday Night Football game, win or lose, their players are established, their starters are the starters. It's just, everything is well defined. Right? Now, you might have an injury at a position here and there. You could say that, the Titans, Farley, the guy they drafted in the first round, coming off back surgery, tore his ACL. That's the building today. That's not an ideal situation, but it's not like you're worried Tannehill or, whoever his backup is. I think when the quarterback position is kind of this teeter-totter and you don't win, things get weird fast. Because coaches, I've been saying this for a while, they just kind of live in that everyday mode as they have to. And then the front office, and if you're Jed, you're like, fuck, let's just see the kid, All the fans are saying that. What are we waiting for? And Kyle gets in this weird spot.
I think it gets hard, John, when your best players, when it changes week to week, what you're getting, right? Where Ayuk expected to be one. Now, Debo has not changed week to week. There are some guys that don't, but
Debo, Bosa, and Fred Warner.
Debo Samuel.
I know people have said Fred Warner's been he's still been one of the better Niners. He's bringing an A game.
Yeah, I just think that makes it. I think part of what we're talking about, it's not just wins and losses. Think about what would you say the most prevalent Niners conversations have been over the last, 5-6 weeks. Quarterback, duh. Shanahan, yes. I'd say Ayuk, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't think Kittle has been a conversation in the sense that there's no controversy there. But you just, for whatever reason, maybe it's because he's got to block more, the injury, he's not been 100%. They're just not getting what they need out of him. And it's not his fault. I'm not saying that. But they're not.
But for example, of he's considered in this top 3 guys, right? Kelsey, Waller, him. When you watch
they are getting
Raiders,
from Bosa what they need.
Yeah, he's been awesome. When you watch the Raiders and when you watch the Chiefs, they depend on those guys. And they can't win typically. The Raiders definitely, they need Waller to be awesome. And for the most part, so do the Chiefs. Need Kelsey. And I watched some of the Chiefs Washington game. He makes some big plays. He's a big deal for them. You just remove George Kittle out. Like, I take away, like last night, Julio hurt his hamstring again. It feels like the 7th straight year that happened. But they still had A.J. Brown and the biggest human being we've ever seen playing running back. So you could just depend on those two individuals, right? And sometimes it feels like the Niners get down to just one. It's like, oh, it's just hopefully Debo can pull some shit out of his ass here. And sometimes he does. So like make some crazy catch with like one hand, pin it against his helmet, break off 3 tackles, and take a yak for 20. But that's not sustainable, right? You know, it's almost, it's unfair. He does need a little help. And he's not getting it.
The running game, too, is we're reminded on the stream.
You need some balance in your offense. Like the Raiders, who we talked about on Monday coming off that game. Like when you have multiple players that are making big impacts, and that's what we thought coming in. They're like Ayuk and Debo with Kittle. Boom. And even if Mozart tears his knee, it's like, well, you drafted multiple guys. That's the way the league works, right? You just plug in some new running backs. That's not really the way it's gone.
Well, and
even
you
though
said
Elijah Mitchell looks good.
He does, but he's not been healthy every game. And as you said from the beginning, Mostert is just a cut above, even in terms of interchangeable Kyle Shanahan running backs. Mostert has been a cut above of the rest of them in his 49ers career. And losing him is hurt. Now, you're playing a Colts team this week that they're in a similar spot, right?
Well, they lose at 2-5 in the AFC. They would be.
Yeah, they actually have one more. They haven't had their bye yet, so they're one game worse. They, though, have similarly played in some games that they probably think they should have won. They've lost one-score games to the Ravens and the Rams. Like, not all 2-win, sub-500 teams are created equal. And 2 one-loss games to 2 of the best teams in the league. I think we can agree the Rams and the Ravens are that.
You calling them the best 2-5 team in the league?
Who are my other options?
I don't know. I'm sure they are.
At the best 2-4 team, I mean... Are they the best team that's 2 games under 500 in the NFL right now? They might be. Let's see. Seattle is 2-4. They lost to Seattle, but that was a different Seattle team.
I'm saying they're 2-4. They're 2-4. What's their record?
They're 2-4. If they were to lose, they'd be 2-5.
Yeah, I got you.
There's some good 2-4 teams in the NFL right now. Actually, Seattle, Philly, football team. And New England. Those are the 2-4 teams in the NFL right now.
Actually, pretty good list of 2-4 squads, huh?
Has there ever been a better list of 2-4 teams in the NFL? I say no, John. My take coming up next. Get 25% off your hydration at liquidiv.com. Promo code HAM.
Yep. Also, get your gamble on with our friends at mybookie.ag. Promo code HAM1. Probably not.
Right? So it's just, but this is not going to be... I do think you get some credit for this one. To go back to your original point, though, it does feel like there's just been a general 40. If anybody that's on a Niner social thread, if you've got Niner fans in your text messages, and as you and I both do, have multiple threads going, people are. It's focused on Shanahan. It's definitely focused on Shanahan. When there was a point in time where not really anybody said anything, if you said, yeah, this guy's one of the best coaches in the league, right? There was no reason really for resistance if you said that. You know, even at the end of last year, after you saw him do things with Nick Mullins, you go, okay, yeah, like I felt that way for sure. I'll just tell you my take was.
Well, did you, I know that I see it's trending on Twitter, the video, and I watched it a little bit on YouTube, but the video that he did with Mayoko, the sit down that Matt does every week with Kyle. And he clearly did it in the bye week with John instead of Kyle. And it did feel like John, and in fairness, like this guy's been around the NFL. He's won at the highest level. He's also been on some shitty teams. Like, he just looked like he was a little squirrely answering the question. Because
I thought so.
And in fairness, like the expectations were sky high. Anytime you have sky high expectations in pro sports, and it's one thing if you don't live up to them at the end of the season, right? If you think you're a Super Bowl team, and like you have a devastating loss in the second round of the playoffs. Like it's just devastating for everyone. But it ultimately wasn't a disaster, right? You went 12-4, maybe you won the division, or maybe you got a wild card and won the first game, but you thought you were going to win the Super Bowl. Like if let's say that happened in Kansas City this year, that would suck, but it's like if that's your low moment, okay. It's another thing like we got a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And then all of a sudden you look up, you're like lost 3 straight games. You go, "Holy shit, are we even going to sniff the playoffs?" And then you have a bunch of injuries. I did feel for a guy that is always just calm, cool, and collected, It's the nature of the NFL. And I think college football too. There is nothing like in football, in the Power 5 level or in the NFL, when people think you're going to be good and you just lose a couple games. There's nothing like it in baseball, not even close, because in baseball it does not matter. And even in basketball, the regular season.
Mike.
It's a big deal, guy. I mean,
Yeah,
in the building.
Is John Lynch happy? Right, he's doing the interview with Mayoko. Is he happy? If Matt said to him, "John, are you happy?" in an honest moment, he'd be like, "Ah, fuck." I would imagine when they sat down, like, "John, how you doing?" Could be better, Matt. Good to see you, though. Right,
losing sucks.
Losing sucks, and so of course now crisis is kind of it feels like maybe it's a word you don't want to agree to, right? Like, we are pissed right now. Crisis makes it feel like you have lost control of a situation.
Yeah.
Right. But there's no question that they're not. Every time they show John Lynch on TV, it's clear he's like, just take me off TV.
But isn't the NFL a good example?
I don't blame him.
And again, I put college football in this too. It's one thing if you're like, Dan Campbell, we send Matt Stafford, complete reset, 6-year contracts, big picture. By mid-October, it's like, he's cried, he's called out his quarterback. Losing it wipes you out.
It'd be easier if they'd lost every game by 14 points, the Lions. But once when you feel like you're close, and the Niners have felt like they're close big picture, the Lions have felt like they're close in specific games, it makes losing.
And they took a 66-yard field goal to beat them. And they had a lead with 37 seconds to go.
Yeah, a 66 and like a 58. Like they've lost 58. Twice on extremely long field goals. I don't know, was it 58, whatever the other one was.
What would you say the worst loss is? 66 to Tucker. Might go down as the greatest kicker of all time, most talented kicker of all time. Be hard for him to win.
Might
as
be
much
the greatest kicker of all time.
But Vinatieri's got like the 7 rings or whatever he's got,
yeah.
and the walk-off field goals. Even
sure.
though
in the
Tucker's
snow,
probably better,
the one in the snow,
or
who were
taking
they
the lead. Taking the lead.
I don't remember.
Broncos, AFC West team, right?
Let me text Derek Papa.
That beating Kirk Cousins with 37 seconds and having him drive the field to get in field goal range. I think I could live with the Tucker. It's a historic moment. That sucks. But the Vikings, when it just happened to you, I think you might snap.
Yeah, I think you would too. I don't blame him. But again, your point is right. Like big picture, the Lions should not be close, and yet here they are.
That's a good question or comment there.
Read it.
The Niners have lost 9 points by a combined 9 points to 2 teams that are 11-1. They should be mad. They need to close games. I think that's the issue. Is coming into the season, we go, they got to start 2-0 because they're superior, and they did. And they took care of business in both games, even though both got a little weird. Then the next 3 games, you go, we're equals. Like, we beat the Packers a couple years ago when we were good and they were good. So, and that was a tight game. And then the next week, you're like, okay, coming off a loss, you're playing your divisional rival. And, like, the game was not as close as the final score indicated. I think the final score was 28-21. Like, that was, in the second half, a beatdown. And, a beatdown that was self-inflicted wounds of Cannon fumbling and muffing balls in the same play. It was a disaster. And then when your season's on the line, and not season on the line, but like kind of your pride, no team that was good wants to lose 3 straight games, but you're in this weird spot where you're starting a rookie quarterback, and it turns out you're playing the 27 Yankees of football. I mean, the Cardinals are playing the Texans. You're 7-0. The Cardinals are a absolute lock to make the playoffs because you're 7-0. There are 10 more games. If they just went 5-5 in those 10 games, they would be 12-5, right? And that's a minimum, a wild card, potentially win the division, right? If they win this weekend against the Texans, which they are a 27-point favorite, basically.
18.
Do you agree? Like they're a playoff team. You can just put a Z next to their name in the standings because how do they?
Yeah,
they could go 4-6
obviously.
down the line. They'd go 11-6.
Yeah, because I think the top of the NFC is really good. The middle of the NFC, which is the NFC competing for those last few playoff spots, is not great. Like there's 5 teams right now that have separated in the NFC, and they all have 5 wins. The Cardinals, the Bucks, the Cowboys, the Packers, and the Rams. Those are your 5-win teams. Nobody else in the NFC has 4. So those are 5 spots. There's 2 spots left. And I'd have a hard time seeing in your scenario an 11-win team at this point not making the play. I think an 11-win team makes
the Niners play multiple of those teams. They play the Vikings, who are 3-3. They play the Bears, that are 3-3. That game that I think we all chalked up to be a pretty easy game against the Bengals. The Bengals are sneaky 4-2. That game's going to be a little harder. And then obviously they got to play
Tennessee.
They haven't played the Rams yet, and they got to play Seattle again with, Russell probably be back by early December. It's just not easy in Tennessee.
At Tennessee, they got to play the defending national champions, Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, that's true. Don't sleep on Urban.